With me is Tamsin Cave. She's a director at Spinwatch and co-author of A Quiet Word, Lobbying, Crony Capitalism and Broken Politics in Britain. Welcome to Going Underground, Tamsin. Just describe the contamination of British civil life by lobbying.
Lobbying's a huge commercial industry in this country. We like to think we have a kind of a cottage industry and we have a little Westminster village, but actually it's this enormous £2 billion commercial industry, and it's their job they're paid to influence the decisions of government.
Now, we all know about tobacco. Maybe
Yeah.
a few of us know about Rupert Murdoch, which I know you begin the book about. You're really going into every aspect of life in Britain being affected by lobbyists. So they'll meet these ministers and they will create government policy.
We sometimes see them as parasitical to our politics. So they're on the outside trying to influence him. Well, they're not. They're almost subsidising it. So they're there with advice and helpful suggestions. They draft amendments for laws. They can help actually put policies in place. So they can create a sort of small army to actually make policy happen. They are embedded within our politics, and like you say, I mean, it can be anything from a very minor, what would seem minor tax break to you and I, and it may only affect one commercial entity, one business, but it could be £3 million to that commercial entity. Or it could be something as big as the privatisation of the NHS. So you get an awful lot of companies over decades lobbying to open up the NHS to private providers. So there's sort of, I mean, any decision that government makes will affect somebody. And this is, as I say, a commercial entity. Lobbying is a tactical investment by companies. It's a way of making money, and the returns on it can be absolutely phenomenal.
There are, of course, journalists that are supposed to help the public understand. They go to think tanks. You do have one statistic, one journalist in news to 4 public relation people trying to shape how they write. Don't know.
I mean, journalists, there are some very good journalists out there, some very good investigative journalists who look at this industry and know about it and understand about it.
Many of them peg stories, say, to think tanks, and the way you describe think tanks is a bit different to how in the morning headlines you'll hear some think tank states this fact, which will change public policy, perhaps. Yeah,
I don't blame journalists. Journalists are under immense pressure to fill pages with content.
But describe the think tank industry.
OK, well, so these lobbyists, and think tanks I include as lobbyists, I mean, it's an open secret in the industry that they are acting as lobbyists, commercial lobbyists for corporations. And so it is their job to basically get the message of the corporations out there. So it could be that you are, and this is a real example, the private health insurance industry. It was not many years ago, they sat down in a round table and they said, how do we get more people to take out private health insurance? Because the problem they had, well, everybody would say, if they said it, it'd be like, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? It's in your commercial interest to say that. So they said, well, we're going to get some of the think tanks to say it. Fast forward 4 or 5 years and you have the think tank Reform, which is a pro-privatisation free market think tank, which is its largest funder is a private health insurance, Pru Health, and it's sitting there saying, yes, we need to reform the NHS, we need more people taking out private health insurance and top-up payments and things like that. So it's a not-so-subtle way of getting other people to say it, because it adds credibility.
AstroTurfing, another term that comes up. Describe that, because I didn't really know anything about that.
AstroTurfing, this is something that's absolutely prevalent in the States, and it's starting to happen here now over the last couple of years. I mean, it's essentially fake grassroots campaigning. So if you are a company again and you want to show support for your particular position, instead of hiring a think tank or talking to the commentariat or whatever, you want to show that there's a public groundswell of support, and you can manufacture that. So in the States, certainly there are banks of, there are whole lobbying firms that have banks of telephones and they do direct mail and things like that, and it's about getting ordinary members of the public to then lobby MPs or politicians for your cause. But this is a totally paid for industry, paid for by corporations to manufacture support.
Given the power of this, and given the, I suppose it was brought in from America, but it's getting worse. I know that you quote that 142 lords have connections with financial healthcare companies. I mean, the book is littered with facts about how power is not democratic in this country. Would you then be able to say that, say, the Occupy protesters, if they're a lobby group, the problem with them is, okay, they have lots of people, but they're too public? Because you constantly talk about private
Yeah,
deals. It's better to make the deals at the Ivy Club. Don't make the deals in the streets.
I'm not saying
or with your MPs.
It's better. I mean, my God, we're not anti-lobbying campaigners. I'm not opposed to lobbying. Lobbying is it's essential in a healthy democracy. It should be right that I should be able to write to my MP and say what I think the government should be doing, and that is lobbying in essence. What is wrong is that you get
but you get nothing from. I mean, basically,
I mean, basically,
you get the effect. You get the impact on policy by the dinners and the drinks.
Yeah, no, that's if you want the route to influence.
The letter from a constituent.
I mean, increasingly so, and the public is wise to this. If you look at any of the polling that's been done, the amount of public mistrust in government and the sense that you have that people have lost their voice within government, but because there is this inside track. I mean, it wasn't too long ago, it was just before the general election 2010 that David Cameron stood up and said, you know, we need to do something about lobbying. People are suspicious of this cosy club at the top, you know, making deals in their own interest.
And how well did Cameron do? Because that's quite a thing. We have finally had a Prime Minister who recognised that.
Well, yes, well, he was following in Obama's footsteps, who campaigned on the same thing. And as it turned out, Obama didn't reform Washington, which desperately needs reform, and Cameron's done absolutely nothing here. So one of the solutions is more transparency. So at least if you can see who is talking to whom and about what, you can then hold your politicians accountable. When you can't see the interactions, we are totally in the dark. So we've been campaigning for a very simple register of lobbyists. It's effectively a list that they update quarterly, and they say who they are, who they're lobbying for, what they're talking about and to whom. We'd like them to say how much they're spending. Are they spending 5,000 quid or £500,000? It would make a difference. So we've been campaigning for that. The government promised they were going to bring one in May 2010. It was in the coalition agreement, and it was only in January this year that they introduced the thing. But I have to say, it's a fake. I sort of ran out of words to describe how bad it was. The lobbying bill introduced a register of lobbyists that's not worth the paper it's written on. It won't open up lobbying. It won't allow public scrutiny of the commercial lobbying industry. It's a pretend register. They went through the rigmarole of bringing in a bill that does nothing.
Tamsin Cave, thank you.
Pleasure.